channel. I'm Queen-Eva. We have a special guest here today.
My name is Major Felix Tachi, Senior Clinical Mental Health Chaplain at the Canadian Forces Base Kingston in Ontario, Canada. I'm glad to be in this video, so I invite you to like, subscribe and share to all viewers. Thank you very much.
So can you tell us about your profession?
In the first place, I would say that I'm a Senior Clinical Mental Health Chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces. As a chaplain, my role is to listen with compassion and without judgment to help individuals in the Canadian Armed Forces who deal with stresses in life so that they can get their job done.
Explain briefly what your role is as a chaplain, registered psychotherapist, and how you are able to manage both as a mental health chaplain in the Canadian Health Forces.
Queen-Eva, you appeared to have asked lots of questions condensed into one, but I'll try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. I have a unique role that I play in the Canadian Armed Forces. As a chaplain, I'm a trained spiritual care provider, which allows me to listen with compassion and without judgment to the issues that are represented in the lives of our men and women who serve in uniform, so as to accompany them when they search for meaning and purpose, as they deal with their existential issues that are stresses to them, issues that get in the way, so that as they are able to deal with these issues, they can get the job done. And also as a registered psychotherapist, when I'm able to accompany individuals at the basic level with issues that they struggle with, sometimes some of those issues become complex. So I tap into psychological resources and skill sets that I possess to be able to help them deal with these issues at a deeper level. Now, I would like to provide examples of some of the issues that our men and women in uniform wrestle with, which is common to a lot of people. Some of the issues are post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, the feeling of abandonment and loneliness. You know, when we wear the uniform, we represent Canada, and more so, we are regulated and authorized to go to war. So people do see things, they do things that they wrestle with. So when they come back home, sometimes reintegrating into the Canadian society and they are in the home front becomes a challenge. So as a psychotherapist, my role is to journey with these individuals to find out sometimes some of the root causes of what's going on in their lives, to network with other helping professionals if possible, to rally and galvanize resources that will help them to mitigate the issues that they're wrestling with, and to be able to cope with them, and if possible to rebound and get back to the field and on the ground to get the job done.
Can you explain to us what mental health is?
That's a good question. Mental health can be defined in many ways from different perspectives, but in my mind and from my experience, mental health has to do with the state of our mind, how we view our realities, how we perceive realities and issues of life, to be able to deal with them as they come. Sometimes the condition of our mind allows us to be able to deal with certain issues in life constructively. Other times, the state of our mind may not allow us to deal with issues in a healthy way. So in essence, as I said earlier on, mental health has to do with the state and the condition of our mind as it relates to how we live our lives.
Is there a difference between wellness and mental health?
Queen-Eva, that is another good question, but allow me to rephrase that there is a direct link between mental health and wellness. There is a bearing. What goes on in our mind has a bearing on how we feel about our lives, how we relate to the environment, how we connect to people, how we resolve issues, how we overcome circumstances in life. So I would say there is a correlation or a linkage between mental health and our wellness. This is a big topic that you brought, or a big question that you brought. The state of our mind can be induced by many factors. It could be hereditary. We may inherit certain mental conditions from our family members, especially our parents. Sometimes it can come on us environmentally, which means what goes on around us, whether at home, at school, in the workplace, in the neighborhood, in life at large, can influence the state of our mind, and which has a connection to our wellness. Now, our mental state can also connect to how we treat our bodies, what we eat and what we don't eat. As I said earlier on, how we are able to get up to go to work or not to work. The list goes on and on and on. So my suggestion will be for us to take very good care of our mental health, because it affects how we live our lives, positively or negatively. If we have issues about mental health, it is important for us to see helping professionals. Either we can have some diagnosis which allow us to use medication, or change our lifestyle so as to be able to live a life that gives us meaning and purpose.
From a mental health approach, what are the things we can do to cope during this COVID pandemic?
The COVID pandemic has brought untold suffering upon everyone all over the world. It has challenged us in many respects. Some of the challenges that we experience are obvious, that we have been isolated from our social support. Even families have been separated as a result of the COVID pandemic. Individuals have not been able to socialize in many respects. Some have to work from home, and as a result, life becomes quite challenging. So some of the things that we can do under the COVID pandemic even is to be creative. We have to find new ways of doing things. We have to find new ways of doing some of the old things that we are habituating to doing. For example, we can use social networking even whilst we are confined to our homes and elsewhere, to connect to social support that we have with families and friends at home and abroad. We can also be resourceful to find ways of how we can tap into existing resources that we have within ourselves and without us. Some of the things that we have within us could be some coping mechanisms. How we cope in the face of adversity, when we are lonely, when we feel isolated. We have to tap into all these resources. Could it be music? Could it be the reading of scripture or holy books? Could it be some kinds of spiritual meditation like yoga or meditation? We can also, whilst we remain isolated under COVID, for us to cope, we can exercise. We don't necessarily have to go to the gym outside of the home to stay fit. So we can just do some low intensity exercise without necessarily even using heavy equipment.
A few moments later.
Finally, I would like to say that improving our diet, what we eat and don't eat, are essential to our mental well-being under COVID. So for us to be able to cope well in isolation, it is important for us to do some introspection, to examine ourselves, to find out what works for us so that we can eat right. And if possible, drink wisely as well. We need to drink lots of fluid and have good rest. Good rest is a recipe for functioning very well under difficult circumstances like COVID. So I encourage every one of us to take very good care of us. These are not rules that everyone has to follow. We all know our individual situations, what works for us and what doesn't. So I just want to put this out there for us to find out what works so that we can adapt to the changing realities under COVID to do well. Thank you.
This is informative and beneficial for all of us. Thank you so much for coming, Major.
Thank you very much, Queen-Eva, for inviting me to be interviewed. I found it quite interesting, and let's do it again. So for every one of you, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for watching my video. See you in the next one.